Good. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Mark. Please take a seat, everybody. Thank you. Today we are here to unveil our fourth budget proposal, and it's a continuation of our work to strengthen Maryland's fiscal health. It's an articulation of our core principles, and it sits firmly on the values of this administration, the values of this state, and the values of this moment. And those values are protecting our people, lowering costs for Marylanders, and increasing Maryland's economic competitiveness. Now, I want to say thank you, because our administration did not simply submit this budget to the General Assembly. We collaborated and we worked with the General Assembly. That the General Assembly members who we had the honor of working with, that they can see their work and their fingerprints all over this proposed budget. And truthfully, that's how it should be. Because of our partnership, this is the fourth year in a row that we are here to present a balanced budget. And this budget does not raise taxes or fees on Marylanders. This budget maintains a very healthy 8% in the rainy day fund. This budget maintains a minimum cash balance of over $100 million. This budget shows that we can spend wisely and also protect our values and demand more from how we are using our budget. Acting Budget Secretary Jake Weissman will go into further detail, but I do want to highlight just a few quick points and to be very clear about both the moment that we're in, but then also how we are navigating it together. So yesterday marked the one-year anniversary of the Trump-Vance administration. And I think for many Marylanders, they can see the distinction about how that 1 year can make a bit of a BC and AD situation. Where last year, we completed session, and when we completed session last year, we turned a deficit into a surplus, and we balanced our budget for the third consecutive year. But then, the introduction of this new administration had other plans as well. Well, since January 2025, federal employment has fallen by nearly 25,000 jobs in the state of Maryland, which, by the way, represents more than any state in the entire country. There's been no state that's been hit harder by these reckless policies of the Trump-Vance administration than the state of Maryland. And then come the cuts from Trump's one big, beautiful bill. His cuts to our federal partnerships, which, by the way, then turn around and put us right back in the hole, altering Maryland's budget and our balance sheet by hundreds of millions of dollars. So we know the realities of what this means. We know the numbers. And Maryland is going to be forced to do more with less. But here is what I want everyone in the state to understand. Being fiscally responsible and being fiscally disciplined does not mean we stop investing in what matters most to the people of the state of Maryland. But it does mean that we're going to be more targeted, we're going to be more data-driven about how we invest. And so this budget is built around three fundamental pillars. The first is protecting our people. We cannot make Maryland safer without supporting law enforcement. That law enforcement will and will continue to play a crucial role in making our communities more livable and also thriving. And that is why this budget includes a record $124 million for local police agencies, which is a $2 million increase over last year. And we know we're going to invest in those things because we've seen the results, where we are now seeing the lowest number of homicides in our state in nearly 40 years. That since our administration took office, violent crime has dropped by nearly 50%, which is one of the fastest reductions in the entire country. Baltimore City is now seeing its lowest numbers of homicides in nearly 50 years. Or put another way, the last time the homicide rate was this low in Baltimore City, I was not born yet. Reductions of this magnitude don't just happen. Reductions of this magnitude and reductions on a statewide level happen because of smart investments and because of a willingness to work together. And through this budget, we'll continue to invest in our all-of-the-above approach to public safety. It is working. We are going to continue doing it, and we are going to make our communities more safe. We are listening to law enforcement, and we're listening to communities. We're listening to state's attorneys, and we are listening to public defenders. We are listening to local leaders, and we are listening to advocates. And by the way, and importantly, we are focusing on areas where violence often exists. And that's why, unapologetically, once again, we are making the largest investments in our state's history to end child poverty. Maryland will end child poverty. Second, we are making Maryland more affordable. From Mountain Maryland to the Eastern Shore, working families are being squeezed every day by these rising costs. The cost of housing and rent, the cost of childcare, the cost of utilities. Too often Marylanders will work in a community, but they cannot afford to live in that community. Too often Marylanders will grow up in a neighborhood that as they get older, they know they'll never afford to be able to buy a home in that neighborhood themselves. That's unacceptable. Outdated zoning laws and unnecessary red tape are limiting supply, and by limiting supply, you are by definition driving up prices. And at a time when we're watching Maryland's population increasing at a faster rate than it has in a decade, if you have rising demand, but you have supply that is not moving, it will cause prices to jump. This is a simple supply and demand equation. So this budget invests $352 million in expanding housing supply and community revitalization projects through the Department of Housing and Community Development. The person who started that applause was Secretary Jake Day. We are continuing the most aggressive housing agenda that Maryland has seen in a generation, and we will not stop. And at the same time, we are sustaining record funding for child care scholarships. Access to child care doesn't just affect children, it affects parents' ability to work. See, one of the reasons that we have now seen a jump in employment, particularly jump in employment in the private sector in the state of Maryland, is actually very simple. It's because of the investments that we made in child care. Because parents should not have to decide between, can I go back to the workforce or are my kids going to be okay? We need them to be able to say yes to both of those questions. So additionally, we are making record investments in being able to both do the apprenticeship and trade work that we're doing, to get people back into a workforce, but also create the platforms for parents to have that safety and stability to do it. We're also making record investments in energy programs and focusing on lowering utility costs. Because energy policy is about whether the system works for the people that use it. Energy policy is not about, does it work for the companies who run it? Energy policy is about making sure that we can have that marriage between both increasing supply and making sure we can make it affordable for the people who need it. Third, we are increasing Maryland's economic competitiveness. Our schools are the foundation on which we will build everything else. If you have strong schools, you have strong pathways for economic growth and economic development. And our budget delivers record funding for K-12 public education, so we build strong pathways to work, wages, and wealth. Our budget provides significant investments in job training, in high-potential lighthouse industries. Maryland can be the capital of quantum computing and cybersecurity. It can seize the possibilities of biocomputing and life sciences to make sure we grow our economy, to take advantage of the vast assets that we have here in the state of Maryland, and making sure that our young people are the beneficiaries. And the reason that we're going to make those targeted investments in these areas is because of this. We know it works. That this is a results-driven budget, and we've already started seeing the impacts of actually making investments in these areas, in these industries. Where last month, Samsung Biologics chose Maryland as the home of its first U.S. manufacturing facility. The largest biotech platform in Korea, when they started looking at where we want to go in the United States, look no further than the state of Maryland. Now, if you look at the work of AstraZeneca, when they were talking about where do we want to continue our growth and development, AstraZeneca said we need to look no further than the state of Maryland, and AstraZeneca made the largest private investment in the state of Maryland in our history. That investment will support 2,600 jobs in the state of Maryland. And just this past week, our future got even brighter, pun intended, when we announced down at the National Harbor in Prince George's County that it was selected as the new site for this country's only second new Sphere venue. This state-of-the-art project is expected to support over 2,500 jobs in the construction phase, generate over 4,700 jobs, permanent jobs, once it's operational, and this project is expected to deliver more than $1 billion in economic impact every single year. So to put it simply, in Maryland, we do big things. That in just the past 3 years, we have now created nearly 100,000 new jobs in the state of Maryland. We've seen over 35,000, new businesses open all across the state of Maryland. 35,000 new businesses open across the state of Maryland, or just being poached from other states or then choose to come to Maryland. But here's what we know. There's more work to do. That this has to be a time and is a budget that is focusing on both protecting our values, making life more affordable for the people of Maryland, and also being the fuel that we need for our future aspirations. And we know this comes at a moment of profound economic and social and political transformation. We know this is coming at a time when many Marylanders are not just scared, not just worried about their present, but they're worried about what they're seeing in terms of the language and the discourse. They're worried about the actions that they're seeing from our leaders in Washington, D.C. They're worried because they thought and they were told that things will be different. Marylanders, they're counting on us to hold the wall. They're counting on us to tackle everyday problems with discipline, with persistence, with bold and tangible solutions, not just today, but for our tomorrow. They're counting on us to make sure that from Western Maryland to the Eastern Shore, everybody is seen inside the budget that we are laying out. That this is a time to prove that we are not going to do politics as usual here. We're going to do not politics as usual, but we're going to do people always. This is the time to show that despite the chaos and frankly the erratic policies that are coming from Washington, D.C., that in Maryland we can focus on predictability and stability and growth. This is the time to reject the hyper-partisan back and forth, the political talking points. This is a time to reject the idea that I hate it because they said it. This is the time when we have to be able to unite across backgrounds and political ideologies, behind family lineages and political parties, and make sure that we are tackling these problems, because in order for this to be Maryland's decade, that has got to be our hallmark. And with that, I'm pleased to turn it over to Acting Budget Secretary Weissman, who will continue to go into details about what is in this ready-to-roll budget for the state of Maryland. Thanks so much, Secretary.
Thank you. Books everywhere. Thank you, Governor. Thank you for your leadership and for the opportunity to serve the people of Maryland. And thank you to my colleagues in the cabinet who are in today and for our work together on this budget. I also need to thank the incredible folks from the Department of Budget and Management, both the folks who are here in this room and watching online. I really appreciate your hard work and your partnership in this process. Over the last 92 days, we've had conversations with legislative leadership and advocates from around the state in crafting this budget. We have been determined to lead with a collaborative approach and recognize that this budget introduction is a continuation of a discussion that we have been having and we look forward to continuing to have with the legislature. Last session, as we do every year, the governor introduced a balanced budget and the legislature passed one. We now face a shortfall. Let's talk about what brought that about. Next slide, please. Simply put, Donald Trump happened. There were concerns about the state's revenue, and our fantastic Board of Revenue estimates forecasted that our state could be hit and planned with more conservative revenue estimates. However, what nobody could have predicted was the chaos in D.C., the abdication of responsible governing, and the attacks that hurt Maryland more than any other state in the nation, costing 15% of our federal workforce their jobs and increasing budget costs in a variety of ways. Next slide, please. In addition, healthcare costs continue to grow. Some of this is especially acute in Maryland due to generous healthcare programs we have, but even more so is due to the same trends we are seeing nationally: increased utilization and medical inflation. Simply put, more people are going to the doctor, which is a great thing for public health, but poses a significant challenge for the state's budget. And this isn't just restricted to social welfare programs. Costs for government and businesses for employee health care costs are rising as well. And again, the chaos in D.C. is bound to worsen the situation. Next slide, please. Maryland is constitutionally required to balance our budget, and we do every year. Our budget, as proposed, is 100% cash balance for FY27. I want to repeat that because it's a constant thing that we hear. It's a constant thing that we hear from our bond rating agencies, our partners there, and other outside observers. Maryland must balance our budget, and we do, and this year is no exception. Next slide, please. We did that through a responsible and collaborative approach to this budget. We eliminated the shortfall with no new taxes or fees, and while still investing in Marylanders' priorities. In addition, as you've heard the governor say, the FY27 general fund budget is smaller than what we expect to spend in FY26. If you want to see this in writing, you'll find the general fund number in Appendix 1 of the budget book. I think I have a copy if anybody needs to borrow it. Again, the FY27 general fund will be $154 million less than what we expect to spend in FY26. Next slide, please. The General Assembly's Spending Affordability Committee laid out 3 critical guidelines for this budget that we are proud to have met. 8% in the rainy day fund, over $100 million in our general fund. Combined, that's a savings of over $2.3 billion for our state, and reducing the structural deficit more than the $600 million requested by the General Assembly. Next slide, please. In terms of total fund, and I want to spend a minute, make sure everybody sees this slide. We are projecting that the growth from FY26 to FY27 in total funds will be the smallest growth in modern history, just 0.8% growth. This budget is a low-growth budget, only funding services essential for Marylanders. Next slide, please. In my 92 days on the job, being fiscally responsible with taxpayer dollars has been a key discussion point from the governor, from the governor's senior leadership team, every member of the governor's staff and cabinet. Towards that end, this budget invests funding in over $16 million towards building and replacing the state's antiquated financial management system known as FEMAS, bringing total project funding to date to $66 million. It has $5 million and additional staff to assist in resolving repeat audit findings in agencies, $2 million to invest in state fiscal leadership capacity and recruitment, and $1 million to extend the Government Modernization Initiative in the Governor's Office of Performance Improvement, and working collaboratively with state employee unions on finding cost efficiencies. These unions represent the employees who are on the ground seeing the detailed work of government and are critical partners to reducing inefficiencies. This is a conscious decision of this administration to work with our partners in the legislature to make clear that this administration takes these issues seriously, and we will continue to work to make sure every tax dollar is spent wisely and for its intended purpose. Next slide, please. As with any budget balancing exercise, there were a series of questions we considered when balancing this budget. That included using one-time funding to ensure we could balance the FY27 budget in a responsible manner. It meant evaluating programs and deciding what costs could be saved and where larger cuts or a slowdown in growth was necessary. It meant making difficult decisions about what sort of pay increases were feasible or where costs could be shared with local government. For example, this year's budget contains only a modest increase for our public four-year higher education institutions, reflecting raises and increased health insurance costs, a 3% increase in funding for community colleges, and level funding of the Sellinger funding for private colleges. At the same time, we do have significant funding for our higher education capital budget, including record investments at Morgan State University, as well as programs throughout the state. Secretary of Higher Education. Next slide, please. I recognize I keep talking about collaboration, and it's because it's important. I want to give a lot of credit to the folks at the Maryland Department of Health who have had over 90 meetings with the folks in the DDA community this fall, the Developmental Disability Administration, to discuss how we make our programs more sustainable and continue to provide critical services. I want to thank the incredible folks at Department of Budget and Management, as well as especially Hannah Dyer in the Governor's Legislative Office, who have worked together with the community to discuss many options. This budget proposal has 4 key elements to contain growth in the DDA. Some of them are brand new, such as, with an exception process, a $500,000 cap on person-centered plans. Others, such as better enforcement of the dedicated hours policy, have been discussed before and are worthy of renewed discussion. These proposals will contain costs in the program by $150 million in general funds and will better align Maryland's program with federal guidance and other states. This is a tough issue, but it's one that we must tackle in a collaborative and a bipartisan manner. Just yesterday, we had meetings with 3 different groups of DDA advocates to discuss the proposals. Our message to all of them was the same: making this program more sustainable so families in the future can rely on this is essential. and we are committed to continuing to work with the advocates and the legislature on finding the right path with this. We believe the approach we are taking is a balanced approach. We are not wedded to it as the only solution, and we look forward to continuing to engage and work with the community on preserving the DDA program. Next slide, please. Our state employees are incredible, doing amazingly difficult work across the state. Even in a difficult fiscal year, we made sure to provide for a pay increase and a more equitable salary scale for the future. Providing salary increases in this measured manner allows the state to provide for our employees in a way that we can afford. Next slide, please. We've paid down the shortfall by making smart decisions, by finding places in our budget to cut, and by managing growth to pay for the investments the state is already making in our people and our community. Next slide, please. At the same time, this budget reflects the real challenges that we are forced to confront. The challenges of a federal government attacking Marylanders, healthcare cost escalation that we're seeing nationwide, together with the increasing needs of Marylanders. Balance is key. Continuing the strong record of fiscal responsibility of this administration is key, while at the same time, we must make sure we are investing in our state's future. This means ensuring our students continue to grow and thrive. The investments in public safety continue to increase, and we continue to wean ourselves off an old model of an economy solely reliant on the federal government. Next slide, please. This administration has consistently led on public safety statewide, and this budget reflects that prioritization, as the governor mentioned. Next slide, please. Earlier this month, the governor outlined the record investments in public safety. This year's budget includes record funding for the State Aid for Police Protection Program, $60 million for the Victims of Crime Act, or VOCA, increased investments in the Department of Juvenile Services to expand services for community-based programs, and increased funding in the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, including $30 million in the operating budget to help rehabilitate aging facilities. Next slide, please. Affordability is not a buzzword. It is the driving reality of a nationwide problem where families are carefully budgeting to ensure they can afford their needs. Next slide, please. And lowering costs isn't something that we can just wave a magic wand at. It's concerted, thoughtful, informed investments by this administration and the General Assembly. Next slide, please. You've heard some of the legislation that we'll be working on with the General Assembly this session when it comes to housing. But for housing, the budget is the other side of the coin. This includes $65 million for our rental housing program, $20 million for home ownership programs, and $5 million for our new permanent supportive housing initiative. You'll see the full list of programs funded through DHCD in the capital budget book, but they reach every corner of our state, including housing projects in Montgomery County, parks in Baltimore City, a community center in Cambridge, and critical infrastructure in the city of Brunswick. Next slide, please. We are proud of our balanced work in clean energy. We utilized $292 million from the Strategic Energy Investment Fund, or SEIF, for general fund relief, and invested over $300 million in clean energy programs to help lower the rising cost of energies. This includes funding for solar tax credit incentives, energy efficiency investments in housing, and research in energy and sustainability. The investments in this budget both allow for short-term savings while creating the more medium-term investments we must make in the state for energy affordability. Next slide. New MEA director. Child poverty is one of the driving forces of this administration, of the General Assembly, and something I'm personally proud to be a part of this work. This administration continues our record investment in the Child Care Scholarship Program, a critical anti-poverty and economic development tool that we know families around the state depend on. This budget also has a record $32 million for the Enough Act, which is fighting childhood poverty and lifting up some of our most in-need communities. This budget also includes funding in Department of Human Services, Maryland Department of Health, and the Maryland Health Benefit Exchange to help prepare for the implementation of H.R. 1 and the harm it intends for Maryland residents. Next slide, please. It is clear, as the governor consistently says, that we must be purposeful in investing in our state growth. We have seen incredibly promising results from our state's investments, and this budget continues that trend. Next slide, please. As you heard the governor state earlier this month, and again today, we are providing record K-12 funding. In part for the $228 million we are providing to make sure that 33,000 Maryland students do not lose out on school meals due to a statutory cliff. Those additional funds, by the way, come from the Blueprint Fund, so there is no general fund impact. The state continues to invest strongly in K-12 construction, with over 25% of our capital funds going to renovate and replace aging structures. It includes critical projects such as the replacement of Delaney High School in Baltimore County, which was built in 1964 and had a last remodel in 1999. I had hair back then. I don't know about you.
Close.
Next slide, please. The reality is that Maryland has to focus on economic competitiveness in a distinct manner from previous administrations. This budget also has more than $100 million in targeted tax cuts for businesses. Under Maryland law, tax conformity is always a choice. Congress does not make Maryland tax law. Maryland and its elected officials make Maryland tax law. As such, this administration has chosen to conform with some of the provisions of H.R. 1 that effectively deliver benefits to Maryland businesses and help drive state economic growth. To be clear here, the state is choosing to fund state business tax cuts and provide state tax relief by conforming with provisions that provide enhanced deductions for research and development expenditures, certain business interest payments, and capital investments made by manufacturing small businesses. Next slide, please. Last January, we joined partners from the University of Maryland College Park and IonQ to launch the Capital of Quantum Initiative, a landmark public-private partnership that seeks to unlock $1 billion in investment and cement Maryland's global leadership in quantum information science and technology. Since we launched the initiative last year, we've secured well over $500 million in quantum investments at the University of Maryland's Discovery District, signed a memorandum of understanding with DARPA that leverages up to $100 million in federal matching dollars, and welcomed new companies to Maryland like Microsoft, whose quantum research center is currently in active development. Our flagship quantum company, IonQ, completed 6 company acquisitions last year, including the $1 billion acquisition of Oxford Ionics. IonQ, a spinoff of the University of Maryland College Park, today has a market cap of $18 billion. And we couldn't be more thrilled that they are building a new $200 million global headquarters in College Park. The results speak for themselves, and the results continue to prove that partnership produces progress, as does strategically and intentionally directing investments to catalyze growth and investments. Next slide, please. But it's not just quantum. We continue to invest strongly in life sciences, including our state's longtime focus on stem cell research. Additional funding for the AstraZeneca expansion, which will create hundreds of well-paying jobs. Additionally, we continue investments in recruitment and retention of key businesses with $16 million in the state's Sunny Day Fund. Next slide, please. The exciting announcement this week of the Sphere in Prince George's County is another place where we are leaning in and leaning forward to bring jobs, innovation, and business attraction to Maryland. The budget provides funding for this project, which will bring thousands of jobs and continue to grow Prince George's County as a national destination. Next slide, please. Momentum breeds momentum. And the pace of private industry looking at Maryland for investment is essential to weathering the storm of the federal government's attacks and disinvestment in Maryland. Next slide, please. Don't worry, we're almost there, I promise. The choices in this budget are not easy. We know every cut we make affects a real person, and every dollar we spend is a dollar we are investing in a better Maryland. We know that, and we are proud and excited about the balanced budget that we are introducing this year. Next slide, please. Last year's budget was balanced with a surplus when we left. Then, the Trump administration, increasing expenses, and other events occurred, which created a shortfall in FY27. Next slide, please. Working together and making the tough and necessary decisions, we have fully funded this year's budget with no tax or fee increases. We have made a down payment on next year's budget, and we are ready and eager to work and collaborate with our partners in the General Assembly to once again pass a balanced budget this year. Thank you.
We have time for some questions.
Governor, few things for our press part. Well, we're trying to keep it tight so you can get to our, so you can get to the budget. So if you could raise your hand, we'll go to you first, and I'll call on you. But then we'll have a briefing after if we don't get to you, as always. Brian, go ahead.
Hey, Brian.
Governor, as proposed, you said that there's about $900 million in cuts to the budget. The estimated deficit, structural deficit's about 1.4, 1.5 billion. Where does another 400 to 500 million come from? And how much of that comes from transfers of one-time funds from other programs?
Yeah, I'll answer briefly, and I'll turn it to the secretary. I do want to be clear. A transfer is a cut. Because when you had capital that was going towards, if you had something that was going to go towards the capital budget, and it is no longer going to go towards the capital budget, it's now going to go something else. That is a cut. And really what this is focusing on, it's prioritization. That we said we were going to spend our budget on things that were both effective and things that were sustainable. And those were guidelines that I had for every single budget decision, difficult budget decision, that I and this team had to make. And so that's where you see a portion of it is actually transfers. But again, to be clear, transfers are cuts. I'm sorry, I know the secretary, sorry.
And I can get into more detail with you offline, Brian, but first I want to go back to what the governor says. Transfers are cuts, right? There's $322 million that we are using in the capital budget to fund this year's general fund. That is a real cut. There is $292 million that we are expending from the CEF for this year's budget. There are also places where we expected to have increased costs that we chose to have less costs. For example, I mentioned Sellinger before, right? That's $4 million that we are keeping them at last year. And so that is the $4 million of cuts. Happy to go through them all with you afterwards.
Good morning, Mr. Governor.
Morning.
So earlier on, you mentioned that Trump's policies are partly responsible for Maryland's financial woes. And I'm really curious about how much Maryland's spending also contributed to the current deficit that we're facing and how your budget plans to address this.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, Maryland's spending did not cause 25,000 people to be fired. Maryland's spending did not cause for not a single dollar of federal support for federal disaster relief that usually goes to states regardless of their political voting records, that now not a single state that voted for Donald Trump has gotten a dollar of federal disaster relief, that Maryland's spending did not cause for there to be a disruption in SNAP because food was being used as a political ploy and a political tool. So one thing that you've seen with this is that we have focused on two basic fundamentals: control the spend within the state and increase our top line by making sure we have higher revenues. In Maryland, we're going to control the things that we can control. I can't control the erratic behavior from the Trump-Vance administration. I can't control the fact that they passed a bill with H.R. 1 that is the largest consolidation of upward-facing wealth that the world has ever seen, where we are literally cutting health care to give billionaires tax cuts. I can't control that. What I can control is by making sure that we can be smart and disciplined in our state, that in our state we are going to say we have to spend wisely and demand more from every single dollar that we're going to invest, and that once again, putting together a budget that is, for the fourth year in a row, not just a balanced budget, but with this budget, a budget that does not raise taxes or fees, a budget that still keeps a healthy 8% in the rainy day fund, a budget that still keeps a minimum of $100 million in our cash balance. Those are things we can control, and so that's things that we did.
Pam?
Hi. Good morning. I have two questions for the Secretary. One, the cost containment on DDA. Can you put a number on that? And secondly, did I hear you mention something about cost sharing with local governments? Can you explain more about that?
Absolutely. The cost containment for DDA is $150 million in general funds. The cost sharing with local government is primarily we are shifting 50% of the retirement growth over the last year in K through 12, community colleges and libraries to our local partners. That's about $39 million.
Danielle?
So in the presentation, you highlighted the increased funding for law enforcement. I don't know if I missed it, but part of the equation of that is behavioral health services. So what does the budget do in terms of behavioral health services in Maryland?
There's an increase over last year is the simple answer. I can get into more detail depending on what you're looking for, but it's an increase over last year.
Sarah?
Good morning, Governor.
Hey, Sarah.
Everything I hear from people is about energy bills and how high they are. Can you just walk through some of the legislation and the budgetary that you're trying to do to help people lower those energy costs and make the state more affordable?
Yes, and so I'll also have Secretary Weissman also add on. But we see this as part of a larger push that we're going to have around energy costs. That the way we're dealing with energy costs is not just the fact that we've put record funding in terms of controlling costs that are going back to people, but also it's the legislation that we're also putting on board. It's also in addition to the fact that, that I have and will continue to stand with governors, both Republican and Democratic governors, that are demanding more from PJM, that they increase their energy options, that they increase the pipeline of supply, that they speed up the process. And while in Maryland, we do believe that we can have an all-the-above energy approach where we believe that solar and wind and nuclear have to be a part of this equation. Because if you have increased supply, you will then be able to help to drive down costs. And so we have not only work within the budget, but also legislation that deals with the immediate needs that people are feeling when it comes to energy, but also making sure we can increase supply on a long-term basis as well.
But how do you do that without federal support? Because the Trump administration hasn't supported offshore wind and things like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's also in court. Because, there's certain things that frankly the federal administration is doing that we believe and other governors around the country believe are not just foolish but unlawful, that we are going to continue our push to increase more options, that we believe that solar and wind and nuclear have got to be part of an all-the-above energy approach in order to drive down costs for people and also make sure we're having a better and a more sustainable grid.
Yeah, a couple other things. Part of what we're doing is making up for that federal disinvestment. So for example, there's $70 million for gap financing and another $30 million for replacement tax credit incentives for solar that the federal government rescinded. This budget also has $20 million for EV chargers. We've got $30 million for the Clean Building Hub for projects to in low and moderate income multifamily housing, and a variety of programs that help specifically in both the short and long term.
We'll go to Mackenzie, then Matt.
Good morning.
Hey, Mackenzie.
I have two questions, but I'll start with the budget because looking at the 50% push or cuts towards the local jurisdictions, how do you explain that when local jurisdictions continue to say that they too are struggling with their own budgets and look to the state and say this is a result, we're in this financial situation as a result of state policies to begin with?
Well, I would say we've worked with our local jurisdictions to come to many of these solutions. I think this is not about we're pushing costs on locals, because if locals look at their budgets, they know what a percentage of their budgets also are helping to be underwritten by the state. This is just making sure that we are both aligning on priorities and ensuring that there is a measurement of share when we're thinking about how this is being, how we're going to fund these priorities. Oh, please.
Just two things on that, Mackenzie. Quickly, number one, local government aid goes up this year in the budget. Even with that cost shift, our local governments are receiving more money this year from the state than they did last year. Second thing I want to point out, there is only one government entity that we're discussing that does not have a responsibility to balance their budget, and that's the federal government. And so when the federal government pushes costs to the state, that is the entity that this question should be asked of. Thank you.
And then, can I just ask about redistricting since that came out last night as well? Responding to what we saw from the House Minority Leader, Hakeem Jeffries, said that this move comes, is a step forward to ensuring a fair national map ahead of the midterm election. You've talked a lot about how this is really a
Well, I didn't hear what National Dems said about the map, but I'm really proud of the work that the Governor's Redistricting Advisory Commission did, because they spent the past 2 months actually listening to Marylanders, that every single Marylander had a chance to have their voice heard. Every single Marylander had the opportunity to have their perspective and their opinions being factored in. And I think the maps that were released is something that is not just going to make our congressional maps more competitive, but it's also something that actually is the will of the people. It's what they've been hearing from people all across the state. And so I'm thankful for the countless hours that they put into this work. I know it now goes in front of the Maryland General Assembly, and my urge for the Maryland General Assembly is debate the maps, make adjustments if you see fit, but take a vote, because people are really anxious to hear where you are on it, and people are really anxious to see that democracy can not just be preserved on a national level, but let's make sure democracy is preserved in the state of Maryland too.
Just two questions. First one for the governor, second one for the budget secretary. With the sphere in Prince George's County, how did that come to be? Was that approached to you by the company, or was this something you were seeking? How did this come to be for Prince George's County?
Yeah, well, I had a chance to see it live, and for those who have not had a chance to see the sphere, it's not, you don't go there to see a performance. It's literally an experience. And so when we first had a chance, I actually saw Kenny Chesney rehearse, which is pretty crazy. I wasn't a Kenny Chesney fan before, but I mean, he's pretty dope. I learned a lot about him in that thing. But you just get a chance to see just how remarkable. I mean, this is one of the most innovative tech platforms on the planet right now. And, as we first then started speaking with them about it, about, plans for expansion, we asked the fundamental question, why not us? Why not now? That if they, the other place they plan on doing is going to be, I believe, Abu Dhabi. And they said, well, we would consider looking at something in the United States. Why not us? Why not now? And so that's why I was proud to, at that point, get with our county executive down in Prince George's County, my friend Aisha Brave Boy, and say, let's do this. Let's go out there. Let's show that Maryland can do big things again. And so we're excited that this innovative platform is not going anywhere else around the country. No announcements that we've seen around the country just yet, besides now Prince George's County and the state of Maryland. So we're really excited about what that's going to be able to bring to us.
And for the budget secretary, you're talking about the cost sharing with local governments. I also saw on the slide you have $900 million in strategic reductions. Can you give us an idea of where some of those strategic reductions are? Sort of broad view, but at least something we can sink our teeth into.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of what I was saying to Mr. Shears before, there's $322 million in the capital budget, right, that is being used for the general fund. So those are future projects that we are not going to be spending money on. We are instead using it for general fund relief, right? There is, if you look through the budget books, we have cuts ranging from, I want to say it's 40,000 at our lowest to up to that 322 million for the capital budget. So it's a wide variety of areas.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.